And this is where they came in and they added the judge's family members. Said, okay, also, you can't talk about Lauren Mercon, who's raised $93 million for Democrats. And if you go to Authentic Campaign's website, they show you that they work for Biden-Harris.
Why is it necessary for this one judge in Manhattan to continue to hang this Damocles sword over his head and say, look, if I hear a thing that I'm concerned with, I'm going to pull you back in here and you could be in violation of this order. And so it's still this disconnect as to why we're even talking about a gag order at this stage. It's clear the case is still before him.
Donald Trump wins a key victory in the gag order battle happening in New York, but it's not a total victory. They're still going to gag him a little bit because they don't want him talking about the judge's daughter, Mercon's daughter, who works for Joe Biden and has raised $93 million for Democrats. Can't have that happening. But the debate is right around the corner, and so Trump can speak about some other items, which we'll see what those look like. This is what the order from Mercon looks like. We got reaction from Turley. He's going to speak about this, but Trump also posted this on Truth today. After this order came down, he said the following: every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, or communists and fascists indict me, consider it a great badge of honor. I'm being indicted for you. Never forget, our enemies want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. They want to silence me, which they're doing, because I will never let them silence you. In the end, they're not after me. They're after you. Says, I'm just standing in their way. From the very first day that we take back the White House from crooked Joe Biden, I believe we are going to have our greatest 4 years in the history of our country. And I think that's right. It's a weird thing to think about. We're in the middle of an election season and our candidate, former president, who is going to be nominated here in just a few short weeks, can't talk about some of the most important issues that we have in this country. Engeron has gagged him. Mercon has gagged him. Shutkin has gagged him. Jack Smith wants him gagged in the Florida case. And they're going to tell us and lecture us that we live in a free and fair country with free and fair elections when the president has 3 open gags about what he can talk about. And one of the things that's off limits is the judge's daughter who works for the Democrats and the judge himself who donated to Joe Biden. We can't talk about those things. Okay, so let's talk about what is allowed according to the judge in free and fair America in an election season that's absolutely not rigged. Here's the judge's order. He says, okay, look, on February 22nd, Alvin Bragg filed a motion to restrict Trump's statements. Trump opposed those statements and the judge granted an order. This is the original gag. We've seen it. Then they wanted to clarify the gag. And this is where they came in and they added the judge's family members. Said, okay, also, you can't talk about Lauren Mercon, who's raised $93 million for Democrats. And if you go to Authentic Campaign's website, they show you that they work for Biden-Harris. On April 8th, Trump filed another action to appeal all of this, and that appeal was denied. Jury selection happened. The Court of Appeals also considered this relief, whether the gag order is appropriate or not, and the New York Court of Appeals upheld the gag. On May 30th, Trump was convicted, 34 counts. We saw that. The jury was discharged. On June 4th, then, Trump asked for a letter terminating the gag order. Bragg said no. We want to keep the gag order in place. So here's the discussion. The main thrust of Trump's argument is that the orders gagging Trump were meant to protect the integrity of the trial proceedings, right? And if the trial is over, we don't need the orders anymore. Now, specifically, Trump notes that paragraph A of the orders prohibits statements concerning witnesses and potential participation in the investigation of or in this criminal proceeding. And since the trial is concluded, the purpose has been satisfied. Now, Trump also says the same reasoning applies to paragraph C. Finally, he makes numerous arguments in support of these other requests. However, this court doesn't need to address that because the Court of Appeals has already said there's no question there. Now, the people, Matthew Colangelo, as we read yesterday, does not oppose the termination of paragraph A, so about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. However, the people do oppose the terminations of B and C. Specifically, they say the proceedings have not concluded yet and that the prosecution, court staff, and their families need to be saved. And so thus termination at this juncture would be premature. And similarly with the jurors, the people say the court should continue to protect the jurors as well. So here's what the judge has ruled. Now, the basis for this issuance is to protect the integrity of the judicial proceedings, which is a total joke because they have no integrity at all. As this court recognized, the quote, threats to the integrity are no longer limited to the swaying of minds, but also on people to perform their lawful duty before this court. Now, both orders are narrowly tailored. They say the orders were overwhelmingly supported by the record, so this judge is patting himself on the back, but the circumstances have changed. So my orders were perfect, but now things are over. It says, first of all, the proceedings have ended when the verdict was rendered. The jury's been discharged. And so paragraph A is now terminated. So Trump can talk about witnesses now. Now, as to paragraph C, the jurors, while it would be this court's strong preference to extend those protections, the court cannot do so on what is now a different record than the prior thing. So paragraph C must also be terminated. Nonetheless, there's ample evidence to to justify continued concern for jurors. Therefore, the protections set forth regulating the disclosure of juror information will remain in effect. So Trump can now talk about the jurors, but not the information of the jurors. Now, about paragraph B, which is about the judge's daughter. The court notes that while witness testimony has concluded, the proceedings are not concluded. Now, this matter is set down for sentencing on July 11th, and until sentence is imposed, you cannot talk about my daughter, says the judge. So therefore, it is hereby ordered that the gag is still in effect as it relates to my daughter, but you can talk about the witnesses and the jurors, but not disclose their names. Signed by Judge Juan Mercan, who is covering up for his Democrat family. The judge has donated to Biden $35 twice, spite donations, and his daughter works for Democrats. So that has now happened. Here is what Jonathan Turley has said about all of this. Of course, in the middle of an election, we'd like to be able to hear from our president about what he's facing and what he's going through so that it can inform our opinion and inform our vote. So here's Turley, you know who he is, reacting to this on Fox.
The criminal justice system. And so he's gotten a bit of a half loaf here. But the question is, why is Merchan still operating this throttle control over what a presidential candidate can say or not say?
The limitations are on individual prosecutors, court staff, and their family members.
Right.
And he's saying that's essentially until the sentencing on July 11th. But that still doesn't make sense to you.
Well, in terms of the prosecutors, that was a big ticket item for former President Trump, is his ability to talk about how this prosecution team came together. In terms of the family members, that obviously was an issue early on. But the real question here is why isn't the normal conditions appropriate here? He was convicted. People are protected by defamation laws. They're protected by a variety of different things. Why is it necessary for this one judge in Manhattan to continue to hang this Damocles sword over his head and say, look, if I hear a thing that I'm concerned with, I'm going to pull you back in here and you could be in violation of this order.
Election.
And so it's still this disconnect as to why we're even talking about a gag order at this stage. It's clear the case is still before him. Okay, the sentencing hasn't occurred. I get that. But to not acknowledge that this is a presidential campaign and this is one of the big issues in that presidential campaign, I think is really nonsense. That the judge could have gone further than he did. I think it's good that he lifted it in part. I think that he recognizes that. I don't know why he didn't do that right after the verdict came in.
We do, because it's an election season and he wants to control Trump's mouth and he doesn't want Trump talking about his daughter who works for the Democrats and that this whole thing is rigged. So that's clearly the reason. And I think Jonathan Turley knows that, obviously, but he's being nice about it. So we've got Trump now able to talk about new things on the debate. He can talk about Michael Cohen and he can talk about a bunch of other things. But the question is, will he? Will it come up? Will it matter at all? We're going to be covering the debate live from Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, and we hope you join us as we do. Every single pixel streamed from our hotel Trump room is going to be broadcast through the best hotel Wi-Fi servers in the planet, the Trump Hotel. So come and join us on Thursday. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. We can't wait to see what happens at this debate, and what Trump is allowed to talk about remains to be seen. So we'll be here covering it, my friends. Thank you for inviting a friend or family member to come over to our channel and join us as we are here covering it, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one.